So, my dear brothers and sisters, today we celebrate, like I said at the beginning of Mass, the feast of the Holy Innocents. And the big question at times that people would take for granted is, why did Herod decide to do this? Why did he want to kill all these children? But this would already remind you of what happens in the book of Exodus, when Pharaoh killed all the Hebrew children, all the male Hebrew children, because of the threat of overpowering him. And that is when Moses was hid in a basket. You remember that story, and put on a river, and then all the story getting unfolded like this. And then we have again in this text Jesus going into Egypt. So it reminds us really truly about that story. Pharaoh killing all the children and dumping them in the Nile, in the river Nile. And then now we have a new Pharaoh, who is Herod. And why did Herod decide to do this? To be able to understand the emotions of Herod, maybe it's good to go back to what happened. How did Herod get into power? Now, when the people of Israel had come out of exile, they were ruled by different people. First of all, by the Greeks, and then the Greeks took over them, and then we had the Maccabees, and then the Romans. But the real problem was that the Jews were looking forward to the coming of a king who is going to rule over them, that will come from the line of David. The Maccabees could not fulfill that. They were very strong. They helped the Jews come out of the situation, and they fought for the Jews, but they never came from the line of David. The Greeks as well, and the Romans. And now when the Romans had authority over the Jews, then there was a nobleman who came from the north, from the south, and he managed to convince the Romans to give him authority to make him king over the Jews, because the Romans had a vast empire at that time. It was like ruling over the whole world, and they didn't have enough personnel to look after everybody. So this nobleman came and he managed to convince the Romans to be able to give him power to make him king over the Jews. And when that happened, he could not also fulfill the prophecy, because he did not, he was not even a Jew. He came from the tribe of Esau. Okay, from the tribe of Esau, unlike the tribe of Jacob that came down the line, and we had David and all that. So there was no way Herod could fulfill that, and he himself knew. But he thought that by his power and authority, he could make the Jews to accept him. But when he was king, he was actually a very good king, because with the power, with the support that he got from the Romans, he expanded the land, and he even built a temple that was more magnificent than the temple of Solomon. So he invested a lot in that land. He invested in the Jews. But then, when he knew himself that he was not from the line of David, and the people were waiting for the prophecy to be fulfilled. And that is why when the three wise men passed through his kingdom and told him, "We have heard that a child has been born, and is king. He has come from the line of David." And he went and inquired with his own wise men, and they told him, yes, that a king would be born in the land of Bethlehem. And that Bethlehem is the land where David was born. And not only David was born, but also that was the place where Rachel, the wife of Jacob, was buried. The burial place of the wife of Jacob was Bethlehem. That is why you hear the prophecy of Jeremiah, where he says that Rachel is weeping for her children, refusing to be comforted because they were no more, because that is the place where Rachel was buried. So when all that happened, and Herod the Great, not Herod the Patriarch or the other children of Herod, but when Herod the Great heard that the child had been born, he got very furious, because he had invested a lot in that land. I said, how am I going to just leave this away? But what he did not understand was that the kingship of Jesus, just like he told Pontius Pilate, is not the kingdom of this world. My kingship is not the kingship of this world. It's not the kingship that people understood it to be. And at that moment, he said, no, I have to do away with this child because I've invested a lot. I cannot just let everything I've done to go in vain. And that is what happened. And in the end, he wanted to kill Jesus, and he ended up killing all these children. But I think something that we could take up from this is just like I said at the beginning of Mass again, that we still have a lot of Herods today, who are doing away with the innocent. There are still many innocent children who are still dying because of what we believe to be civilization. In other words, we feel that to be civilized, we can just do with people what we want them, what we want of them. And so it's something to look into maybe during this day, to pray for the aborted children and maybe children who are being abused as well. And secondly, when the prophecy is also called out, when God said, I called them out of Egypt, because Egypt is associated with slavery. So Jacob is being commanded by the angel to go into Egypt. Joseph. And Joseph knows exactly what Egypt is. That it's a land of slavery. It's a land that nobody wants to go into. It says, I call you out of that land. What does that mean? That he's calling him, Joseph, Jesus, and Mary, out of the land of Egypt. Jesus is the new Moses, making the new Exodus out of Egypt. And he's calling not only Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, but calling us also out of the land of Egypt, calling us out of the slavery from sin, slavery of the things that we are going through, calling us out of the suffering that we are going through, calling us out of the addictions that we have. And I think this is what Jesus does when he comes out of Egypt and settles now in Nazareth. That God, in his love and in his mercy, also wants to call us from the land of captivity. He wants to call us out of slavery into freedom. He wants to call us out of darkness into light. And we pray that God, in his love and in his mercy, through the intercession of the Holy Innocents, we pray especially that God will grant grace to the people to stop aborting innocent children, but also as well that we may accept the freedom that God offers to each and every one of us.